Just need to make sure the audio's. Yes, it is. Hey yo, this is Wanderlust. Over here is.
Derek Simon.
Yep, we're here to talk about the things that went on during the off season, during well, right at the end of since the end of the season. Stephen Hart had left us. It was a mutual agreement, and uh, and now it's a few things. At first, there wasn't much happening, and then there was a lot happening. So let's talk about the season as a whole. We actually started out okay. We had a wonderful road game against York where, I mean, even though we didn't score in open play, we did have a strong performance.
Yeah.
Morelli was there.
Yeah.
That's probably a large part of. Yeah, Morelli was there. I learned to love Fernandez very quickly, and I still do. And it was a time when I was really not wanting to see Everton, and I was kind of motivated even more to look closer to home. And things looked pretty good, although I can't really look at the table until like the fifth game of the season or so because it's going to go all over the bloody gaff. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think tactically in the opening game, there was promising signs, and then obviously season changed when Morelli got hurt in that second game, and
Jesus,
nothing was quite the same after that. There was
that was
some
distressing.
glimmers of hope here and there, like that 3-0 away to Pacific, but
Fucking great that was.
The good moments were kind of few and far between.
Right, you are. Note that we never won 2 games in a row this whole season.
Yeah, and I
Crazy.
think I've heard the sentiment from a number of people that the season is better forgotten. But I do think it's always important to take stock at the end of the season and look at what you did well and what didn't go so well, and
learn from whatever you
learn
can.
from mistakes and you learn from what you did well. So I mean,
of course,
I think there are things the team didn't do well, and we can certainly look at those in detail.
Agreed. You pick up learn whatever you can from whatever you can, and that's the case. And one key lesson that I think they applied with something we're about to discuss later is the fact that we couldn't hit the ocean with a boat.
Yeah, I think linked a little bit to be tired, and I think there was a few factors there, but we were the lowest scoring team in the league in 2021, and it was clear that we needed to add some goal scorers, particularly up front, and that simply didn't happen. So we needed to add a goal scoring forward and didn't, and so you can sort of look at the Morelli injury as a turning point, but really I think our problems kind of started in the off season when maybe we didn't bring in the players we needed to bring in that off season, and so once again we were bottom of the league in goals scored.
Right, and this terrible thing, when the incident where Morelli did his ACL, that happened at the start of the season. There was a lot of time to prepare. I mean, this is still going to be a massive blow, and I can assure you Morelli's presence would have made a difference even in this joke of a season. But
yeah, I think if losing one player ends your season, you've got bigger problems. And so, like I said, I think the roster building in the off season last year was maybe far from my ideal. I think they were a little slow to move to replace Morelli. I recognize they felt they didn't want to rush things, and so they were prepared to wait till the season window. In retro, and hindsight's 20/20 on these things, but that spring transfer window was open for another 2.5 weeks when Morelli got hurt, and they had some cap flexibility because of the injury, and ultimately the player they did end up signing in the mid-season transfer window, Fumpa, would have been available in that season transfer. So maybe could have moved a little faster to replace Morelli. I think there's some positives and some signs that they maybe did learn some lessons about roster building over the course of this season. I think some of the late season additions were quite promising.
Yes, they were.
Yeah, Fumpa being one. Christian Campagna, I think, was an excellent signing. And the other thing that, really kind of cheered me up, because I've been beating this drum for a while, was bringing in a full complement of under 18. So this is the first season that the Wanderers have signed under 18s, and there's very specific roster rules around them, but you can sign up to 4 of them on these development contracts. And, it just gives you that bit of extra flexibility if you're going through, a rough spell with injuries or players out for various reasons, where you've got some bench players that you can make use of. The other thing is it creates a pipeline for your future U21s. So we know that there's specific roster rules around U21s where you have to have at least 3 of them. They only hit the cap at 50%, so there's a real financial advantage to signing more U21s. And we're in a region where we don't have the same development pipeline that other regions do, and so I think having U18s there is really critical to kind of building a future pipeline. And so I do think that, although Adisa Di Rosario was the only one that actually saw the field in the season, I still think having all 4 in was a good thing, and I'd like to see 4, as close to the beginning of the season as possible next year.
Di Rosario was a breath of fresh air, even though he played in the last game of the season, and even though we lost that game. I know we lost it 1-0 to Forge away from home, but guess what? Di Rosario had a lot to do that game, and he did it very well. Without some of the saves that he'd made, it would have been a snuff film.
Yeah, he as a 17-year-old having to step up and play against the best team in the league at their home, and he played about as well as any goalkeepers played. I thought he had a lot of promise. So don't know if he'll be back with us next year. His contract status with TFC is a little unclear. He may be back. He may be available on loan, but certainly one to look at for the future. So those late season signings, I thought, both from the senior team, but also the U18s were much more promising. So,
and there even some of the early losses showed some good news, like say the first Pacific Halifax game. We played pretty well, and it was only a very small misstep at the end that cost us.
Yeah,
Tabby was playing well until then, actually. Tabby was playing well most of the time. It was just fine margins.
Yeah.
Think about...
sorry, go ahead.
And the thing about Tabby was he was very new to the league, and I think for a while he grew into the league, and he shows things. His games were overall average. There were mostly games where most of his games were very average, not great, not terrible. And
I think Tabby was not quite CPL ready. So you can see, and I think most people you talk to, you can see the potential that's there. He's a very good athlete.
Yes.
And you can see the potential that's there. I think he needs a year or two at a PLSQ or League One level before he's CPL ready. And so
I could see that working for him.
Maybe you sign him to the U20 thing. He needs development he's a CPL player, but you can definitely see the potential that's there. So another one for the future, maybe.
Entirely.
You mentioned Zach Fernandez. Obviously, his signing was a bright spot and further proof that there's good talent to be found at that League One PLSQ. Yeah, I'm late, but great addition. Superb defender, very very smart. I think we were high on him when we did an episode about the late season signings a while back, and it turns out rightly so. We talked a little bit about Fumpa. Mo Omar, look, he came in a little bit and he struggled at first to make that jump from college to professional ball, but once he came in his own, I just remember there was a spell towards the end of the season, sort of the last third, where I think he played 3 games in 8 days and was superb in all of them. And kind of wondered, was he ready for this level? But once he found his place and found his feet, he definitely proved to be a solid signing. So
wasn't he in Blainville when they won the lot, or when they won the PLSQ?
Omar's background is he was a
Fernie's.
Oh, Fernie was, yeah. Sorry, Fernie was with we had.
You're breaking up. I got none of.
We had played against him in the Canadian Championship the previous year.
Okay.
So yeah, he was a Blainville guy. Another player that I think worth commenting on. I think the return of Jake Ruby was a welcome addition.
The return of Jake Ruby was like a new signing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, he'd been out for so long, and I really think we'd kind of forgotten about him. I'd argue he was one of our 4 or 5 best players in 2021 before he got hurt. And unfortunately, he was out for the better part of a year when he formed pretty quickly. A very versatile defender. He can obviously play as a right back or as a right center back in a back 3, and so I think he gives us some nice tactical flexibility. I'd love to see him back next year. If not, I really hope he lands somewhere else in the league, maybe closer to home in Vancouver. And Mo came into his own, and Campagna came in. I think that gave us a lot of defensive solidity that was missing earlier in the season.
Okay, one moment. Since my camera... Right. Okay, excellent. So, here's something else I can do. Okay, here's something else. One thing else I'm noticing is after those, our home. It took a while for us to actually have a home game, and our first home game showed promise.
Yeah.
And yes, I know it's Edmonton, but Edmonton had done some pretty good things in this season, even if they finished dead last. They fought like hell against Forge, for example, in one of the games in the middle of the season. They took, I believe they put Valor and Ottawa on their backs. Sometime.
Yeah, you can't help but be impressed with what Alan Coach was able to accomplish this season with the very kind of limited resources. They finished last in scoring, obviously, and they were playing some exciting football at times. He really, you could tell from when he was talking and from when the players were talking that he'd really gotten them to buy into this concept of sort of opportunity FC, that this is your, we may not win every game this season, but this is kind of your opportunity to show yourself at a higher level. And they a lot of fun to watch at times. They were not a low scoring. They were not the lowest scoring team, as I said, and Wesley Timoteo and CJ Smith, both of whom were on loan from Halifax, showed really well. Timoteo was consistent throughout the season.
He was solid.
Smith, sorry?
He was.
Yeah, I mean, he was sort of a consistent bright light. CJ Smith came more towards the end of the season. Another player that was maybe just trying to adapt more to the professional game, but when he did sort of, by the end of the season, he was really giving defenders a hard time. So a couple of other players to look at for the future, and if the Wanderers still have them under option or what have you, well worth looking at taking a look at for next year's roster.
Hell yeah. And Warshevsky, that guy, he played. I mean, he's the kind of guy, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up going to if he doesn't go to a team higher up. Once Edmonton has moved, Edmonton's no longer in the CPL, tragically, but I could totally see him going to another team in the CPL and doing well there. Possibly a Valor or a Pacific or something like that.
I think York owns his rights.
York, okay.
So, yeah, I think York signed him and loaned him, so they've got the first kick at that can, unfortunately for us. But no, definitely a good player.
Okay. I mean, I honestly didn't think we'd end up I honestly would if we somehow got him, it would have come out of nowhere.
I'd be very happy to see what I don't know John Warshevsky, but to see either of those guys, I think they'd be solid additions to our squad.
Oh yeah.
Do we want to talk? We've talked additions and good players. Do we want to talk departures?
Well, departures come later. Well, the thing about it is, and then we had then our season sort of was hit and miss. Early on, we looked like we could either narrowly miss the playoffs or narrowly reach the playoffs, because we had that really good run of 8 points out of 12 with Edmonton, Valor. Not 8 points in 12, my bad. 5 points in 9. And we did well against Guelph. Granted, Guelph were L1-0, but we still did well against them in their own area in the Can Champs. And we, let's see. And then there was the draw that felt like a loss. The one where we were ahead the whole time against Cavalry until they scored off of a set piece, like literally the last thing in the game that happened. It went in the back of the net and full time.
Yeah.
One thing that was...
I really think the turning point of the season was probably those two losses to Forge, though. I mean, the 4-0 and the 3-0 at home. And that was certainly one of kind of the challenges of this season is whatever, even in 2019 when we were not by any means a great club, we were still pretty solid at home. And this season we weren't. And I think it became a little harder to kind of paper over or up the fact that, we're not a great team. When you had so many, disappointing results at home. Those against Forge in particular really to change the trajectory of the season in the wrong direction, unfortunately. So
that you think that knocked our confidence so hard it was we weren't even really able to pick it up again at all.
Yeah, I do feel like that. I think, um, and Bobby Smirniotis is obviously a very smart coach, but I think that tactically, it taught other teams how to play against us, and it was just that high press that we had trouble playing against, and it was kind of a blueprint for here's how you can beat the Wanderers even at home, and we saw it deployed against us. So to me, those two losses to Forge, I think, were kind of the turning point. We've been able to bounce back in the second one and learn and adapt from what went wrong in the first one. We might have been, we might not have been a playoff team, but we probably wouldn't have been a seventh place team. But I think that really took a lot out of the team's confidence and, revealed some of the weaknesses in our tactical approach.
And other teams took note, which people don't always think about in a league like this. Sometimes somebody wins in a decisive manner against a team, and other teams take note, and it becomes a lot harder for that team to really adapt because of that, or really find their way out because of that.
And so definitely, I think, one of the things going forward we got to look for is a little more tactical flexibility, because it felt like we had one
100%
approach. So, I'm optimistic that Geyser has a few tricks up his sleeve. But I think a lack of tactical flexibility really hurt us at times this year. We ended up kind of towards the end of the season switching from kind of that 4-3-3 that we were playing to more of a 3-5-2, which we had used before. We'd used it mostly against Forge in previous seasons and stronger teams. And that gave us a little more solidity at the back, playing with that back three. But it also cost us in terms of goals up front. So our already low scoring pace even more after we made that switch. We were definitely letting in less at our end, but not scoring as much as at the other end. So it didn't make it gave us a bit of defensive solidity, but it didn't make for very exciting football. We'll put it that way.
Oh no, it didn't. I'll tell you one thing else. Here's one thing that I'm still extremely clueless about. I could see how a team could do well at home, but absolutely crumble away. That was Everton last season to a T.
Yeah.
And they were average at home, in my opinion. But how can it? What sort of things lead to a team being especially weak at home? That's the thing I don't get.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no psychologist. I think you can get caught in a bit of a vicious cycle where you have a couple of bad results at home and it gets in your head. And that's why I kind of point to those two Forged losses, because I think at that point it kind of got into the players' heads and maybe the coaches' heads a little bit, that, maybe the Wanderers grounds was no longer this fortress, and that became kind of almost a self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense that, you're a little more all of a sudden playing in front of 6,000 plus fan goes from being this asset where they're behind you to worry you're going to upset them or disappoint them, and so it can become a bit of a negative.
I speculated on that the night of the 0-4 pantsing, and it almost seemed like I was being harsh on the crowd, which I really didn't want to be. And
I don't. That's.
You're breaking up again. Something's happened to your audio there. Try again.
Sorry, I was just saying it's not a criticism of the crowd. It's not even really a criticism of the players. Like, I think that's human nature, and you've got to, but you've got to find ways. Good coaches will find ways to break you out of that cycle and that mentality, and that's what we got to look for going forward. I liked what, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but there was some comments that are made in one of his interviews. You know, not weaponize, but how you take advantage of a big crowd by playing exciting football, and really turn them into that 12th man. And I think that's something that was missing this season, is you know, a manager that really got that, you know, the 6,000 plus crowd becomes much more of an asset when playing fun, exciting, winning football, right?
Okay. And sometimes the crowd and the fans make a conscious choice to get behind the team as a chess move, not because they think they just. Well, I'm not gonna use that word because I don't like the implications of that either. But not because they want to, but because it's important to push them over the line. That was also true with a certain blue club in Merseyside last year. And there's that, and the fact that the gaffer was trying to get in that connection with the club. Steve's a pretty nice guy, and he's been one, and I love him, and I hope he does well in the future outside of this club. And I think he'll do better outside of this club than he did in it. But I don't think he had that kind of rapport. Either that or he had it, but he lost it when it was clear that he lacked the kind of adaptation that we really needed.
Yeah, Steven's a very smart and experienced coach.
It's not a dig on his brain.
I will agree with everybody that has said that he was the right choice. Local community, and given the level that he's coached at. But I mean, football managers have extremely short shelf lives, unfortunately.
Right.
And that's the reality.
Every loss is a whole other bit of pressure put on.
Yeah. And I think somebody said, you know, you do lose your job, and 4 years is a pretty good run by any measure, because a lot of managers last a lot less long than that. So
right, you are. And at least we're not the friggin' Prem. I mean, look at how quickly managers get tossed out over there. Jesus, it's like changing your socks half the time.
Yeah, there was a bit of a running joke about the lifespan of Wolves managers versus the lifespan
and Chelsea and Everton
recently. But yeah,
guys like Sean Dyche and Jurgen Klopp, who's managed to stick around for years, they do so for a heck of a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, Sean Dyche.
Part of that, I think, and again, I may be previewing our comments here. Very effective communicators, and that's, you know, Jurgen Klopp is very effective at communicating. He's very effective at communicating to players too. I don't know, I'm not on the pitch, but he's very effective at communicating with media and making clear what his kind of vision and identity of the club and so on. And that goes a long way. If you get fans and you know, if you get supporters and people to buy in your vision of is and what the identity of the club is, that goes a long way too, right?
No matter how many ridiculous over-the-top excuses you make every time a game doesn't go your way. See also Bobby Smyrniotis.
Yeah, it's probably one of
He's a very good coach on that level. Not on that level, but he's a very good coach on a very high level in his league.
He is. He's a very good manager, and that's one of the few weaknesses I point. He does have this tendency to blame the officiating when things don't go his way, and that's not something that I have no time for that, to be frank.
Sometimes it is the ref. Sometimes the ref does take the piss. But yes, you can't make a habit of it, even if that seems to be the case.
It's a development league. like. And so, yeah, is the standard where it needs to be? Probably not. Does it need to improve? Absolutely. I don't think anybody can convince me, though, that a particular club has been disproportionately advantaged or disadvantaged by that. There's been some bad calls that have gone for and against a number of teams, and I think over the course of the season,
we got away with a couple too.
Yeah, I don't see any.
We've been hosed, but we've also gotten away with a couple.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we relied particularly on penalties, which you need the officials to call them, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And all right. So, yeah, the thing that was kind of, I think, was a bit of an unforced error on. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know, but this may, because of the way it ended up, it'll seem. I don't blame anyone for thinking it was an unforced error, but it seemed like Stephen Hart effectively sacrificed the Halifax Forge game, the first Halifax Forge game, for the sake of the Can Champs. And we did fight hard in the Can Champs. And we almost took it to our best strengths, penalties. If we managed to hang on just a little bit longer, we probably could have advanced. Not joking.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about the Can Champs is if we could ever just get to penalties. We've been so close the last 2 seasons against MLS clubs. It's one thing that this team tends to be quite good at. And so I'd say we've do get to penalties. Unfortunately, that wasn't the reality. I think at the time, you're right. We very much saw that the based on the roster decisions made and stuff, they had the Forge game and the TFC game were pretty close together. And that we kind of sacrificed the Forge game for the TFC game. And I can understand why the club would do that. Financial stake, because we would have, if we had beaten TFC, we would have hosted Montreal at home.
Like we did the previous year.
Yeah, and so, the 2 MLS clubs hosted back-to-back, that's a guaranteed sellout crowd. That's additional revenue because it's not in your... So I don't blame the club for doing that. I do think we needed a better game plan going into the second game, though.
Correct.
It felt like we didn't learn or adapt at all from that first loss. And that's unfortunate.
Jimenez found the way around us after a while. I think it was Jimenez. One of the Spanish players who effectively managed to break the deadlock. I don't think he scored, but he did set it up in a way that required him to do so. And it was counted as a shallow OG, but I saw it and it didn't seem like that.
Yeah. Speaking of high points of the season, although it was a loss, I mean, that Toronto match was a real high point of the club so far, I'd argue, not just this season. And, I just remember being there at halftime and it was still a draw. And all of a sudden they sub in, think it was a Blackano, and
you broke up again while you were talking about names. You subbed in.
I was just saying that I think it was, I think they subbed in Akinola, Osorio, and I don't quite remember who the third sub was.
Was that Schaffelberg? I think that was Schaffelberg.
I thought Schaff might have, I think Schaff came in the second half. But there was a point, they made those 3 subs, and we said, oh, wow, things just got real. And you get to a point where there's how many current Canadian men's national team players on the pitch against little old Alex. It was really surreal.
Yeah, I think the goal that undid us was through Jimenez, then Schaff, and then
Schaffelberg set it up. Osorio buried it.
Osorio, okay. Okay, and that
blamed by Schaffelberg. I mean, he created the chance. So
okay, yeah, okay, it was Schaff. It's Then Garcia. Then we had a Garcia penalty save us from a a performance that actually was rather shit, but we won. So we take those. And how the first home game against York, it was exactly the kind of game you associate with Halifax Wanderers.
Yeah.
1-0. You'll never guess how we scored that one, by the way. And it was Garcia.
Yeah.
That was, Garcia had a really good first half of the season, and the second half, not as much. Then there was the Cavalry game, which it was a 1-0, but it didn't feel too good for us. I guess because we were pretty close to the playoff zone, and that was just another missed opportunity, the first of way too many.
Yeah.
Then Halifax Edmonton. I left the room initially. This was the really late one that started me doing post-match reviews instead of watch-alongs, because 11 o'clock, no thanks. And a lot of people were going to agree. And I saw Edmonton score, and I had to go to the bed and look on Flash Score because I wasn't really feeling the rest of the game. And then Sammy friggin' Salter showed up, got his double, and he grabbed the game by the short and curlies. I mean, he's had good games and he's had stinkers, but on his day, he can take a game that we're losing and just, no, we're not losing this. No. We're taking this.
Yeah.
If only it was more able to do so. If only we as a club were more able to do so. If Salter's part of Geyser's plans, he'll look real good.
Yeah, we'll see how he fits into, and we'll get to Geyser's tactics later, but we'll see how he fits into the club's plans going forward.
All right. The second Forge game skip. Then the Pacific Halifax game, the best we would look for months. I mean, it was away from home. It was at the Starlight Stadium, and it was like a home game to us. First, it was Daniels absolutely tea-kettling Diddich for one of the goals. That one looked like it should be 18 rated.
Yeah.
And let's see. I'm actually going to go to Flash Score and look at the game backlog so I can see how that game played out, because that was a friggin' beauty. And it's amazing. And it's horrifying that we never really played like that ever again.
Well, we hadn't really played like that before either. I mean, that was the first time we'd really gotten a big road win, and so it was really encouraging because it seemed to get us back on the right path, and we played quite well, better than we usually have on the road. But as we said, it became a bit of a false dawn because we then went on a bit of a skid after that. And I think if I'm going to point to kind of another turning point of that season, it's maybe a few more games down the road. But that 3-0 loss to Cavalry, where where JGL got sent off.
That had me pissed off for a long time.
And got a suspension, which should never have been upheld because it was quite clear whoever
Joseph DiChiara.
Yeah, whoever touched Joe DiChiara, it wasn't JGL, but losing him for 3 games when he was one of the beating hearts of our midfield, that hurt us big time too.
That ruined us, and we didn't need the help. In the best game of our season, even more Sam scored, and he didn't. And it was an open play goal, I believe.
Nice goal.
Yeah. After Pack, it just seemed like everything went to shit. Like 6 games winless. It really looked like a free fall. First,
probably that low point being that 4-2 loss at home to York, who up until that point York had been struggling offensively even worse than we had, and that's kind of the game they start.
If I wasn't actively trying to remove this kind of language or superstitious or doom or like doomy language from my vocabulary when talking about games, even when things are gross. I would say that we raised the dead. We inspire greatness in other teams or some other ridiculous thing like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly seemed that way a few points this season.
Yeah. Let's go. I'm going to briefly summarize each of the 6 games that sealed our fate playoffs wise. Halifax ATO 1. We held on like you wouldn't believe against ATO's incredible counterattacks, and eventually, when they realized that wasn't working, incredible regular attacks. And then Salter got bounced. And that was one of the. Let me see. There were like 3 games in 5 where we had a red card. That was part of the horror. Yeah, I'm going to go to the results. It shows the red cards, and yeah, Halifax Wanderers. The second Forge game was the first one where one of ours was bounced. It was Restrepo. I'm not sure. His was a dog so kind of thing, and it was only one game, and that just seemed it seemed a little harsh. I mean, he didn't have a good game that game, but I think that was a little harsh. Then there was the Pack game. Then there was, in Ottawa, that was the one where we were doing okay until Sammy Salter and somehow ended up on the far back end of the pitch and managed to get mugged off into getting sent off while he was on a yellow card. I don't know what. And then it all went downhill. Atleti won at home 2-0. You there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Valor Halifax 2, when Valor were... one thing that's really interesting about Valor is they play like protagonist soccer teams play in various works of fiction meant for kids. They are like all pace, all passion. They will run naked backwards into hell for PDS. They believe in everything he's doing. And they're exciting. I wish we were that exciting.
And well, we did. I mean, they were one of the few teams.
I know. We took 7 off of them that season, and that's impressive because once their pace and their passion doesn't get them what they need, then they can be managed. But yeah, the thing is, they kept going and going and going and going at us in the second away game against them. And I think they had like 20 shots, 8 on target, and only at the very end did one of them get in and give them the 3 points.
Yeah.
It was like 90 seconds of pure butt clenching.
Yeah.
Then the infamous Cavalry Halifax game where JGL got sent off for absolute BS reasons. The Lions. I'm not even going to pin it on CSM. I'm pinning it on she clearly didn't see it as it happened. I'm pinning it on the Lions person.
Yeah, that's a classic example of a official responding to a reaction rather than something they saw. And so DTR is a great actor and a great embellisher. And on that occasion, it worked. And I'm
you mean JDC? You mean JDC?
CSA did the appeal because it was quite clear it wasn't JGL's hand on DTR. Maybe they just figured,
DTR, okay.
Somebody, maybe they just figured, it might be DKR. I might be saying it wrong. You're probably right.
Yeah, DKR, yeah. Yeah, DKR.
DKR, yeah.
Dick Iara.
Maybe their logic was, well, somebody touched and they weren't in a position to figure out who, so they let JGL take the fall for it. But it clearly was not him with his hand on DQ.
Cavalry, I always call it cavalry fouling constantly. And they're the shithousery team. They're the take a yellow for the team kind of team that we have in this league.
That's absolutely the way. I mean, it's clearly part of their approach and their tactics and identity. They take a lot of cards, and a lot of them are very smart fouls, tactical fouls, and they're good at getting under opposing team skins and getting opposing teams to do stupid things. And we responded and did stupid things, and unfortunately, it was the wrong player that paid the price. But like I said, that really kind of hurt.
What do you think we did that actually was the mistake? Was it JGL doing the push that deserved a yellow but not a red? Is that what you're talking about?
As I understood it, the red was for the hand on the throat, and that was definitely not JGL's hand.
Oh man, yeah. Then there was the draw that we. Then there was the period that I called six or bust. The two lowest teams on the table at home.
Yeah.
There was one where Gander, I think this was the low point of Gander's season, where I'm not even sure it was a penalty. I'm not even sure it should have been a penalty. It seemed really, really soft. When Gander tripped somebody, I forget who, and Warshevsky put it in. It took us most of the game to equalize and get a point out of a game we needed to win. And we looked floundering. We looked like we were floundering all the way through. And especially Higgins, who is a shit center back. Let's have it right. Was on a yellow super early, like 3rd minute, and we didn't get his ass. I don't get it. If we put pressure on some of their center backs, on their center backs, and on others who got a yellow there, I can assure you it would be 11v10. We would have been able to do the business.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we can go through every match in excruciating detail. Reality is we weren't good enough season 3.
Yep. Halifax York too. We weren't good enough. Even
changes in the off season that make for a better season next year.
All right. I think we learned from that we need to go and put pressure on folks, especially if they're already on a warning. And we'll get Halifax York too. That was a mess. We even scored an open play, and with Santos did a great job. And it's a shame that was in a game where we didn't do a great job. That was the source of the infamous Oxer gif, where he was playing goalie and left back and doing poorly at both.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because Eric Santos is clearly he's a very passionate player, and he gets very excited, and you see him when they're playing at home, he's always trying to pump up the crowd, and his first goal as a Wanderer should have been a happier occasion, and unfortunately, because of how the game went, it wasn't the occasion it should have been, because should have been an exciting moment for that guy to score on home, and we lost 4-2, so it wasn't.
Forge Halifax, we knew that a lot of us wrote that off. Forge scored off of the first set piece in the game. We managed to stop. I'm not sure whether we managed to stop them scoring others, or if they just realized, they're not going to come back from this. Avoided doing anything silly in the box and just let it ride. It wouldn't surprise me if it was that second one. I expected the hell, and we just got kind of embarrassed. Not in the scoreline, but in the way that they got one, and then they just were able to sit on it. Then we were back, some of the lessons we learned from last time, where we get at folks that are under pressure. Halifax Valor 1 and Halifax Pacific 1 were great examples of that. And they were the scoreline you associate with the Wanderers. 1-0 penalty, but they were also ones where it was one of them who made an unforced error, or in some, well, not an unforced error, they were forced errors, where we put pressure on Mekazetic or Mekadesh. We put pressure on Mekadesh, and it got him sent off at a time when we were already ahead due to, you'll never guess why, a Salter penalty.
Yeah.
That kept them from getting back in, because they still had a lot of energy about them. They were just, but yeah, there was a whole Donnybrook. We somehow managed to get Mekadesh. I'm not sure whether Mekadesh was a damn fool who got involved, or if we managed to draw him into it. Probably a little of both. Either way, it kept them from pulling it back. That was also when we saw Mondway, and I was excited to see him, even though he didn't score. I mean, nope. Oh yeah, and there's Pacific. Pacific were pissed off. 5 cards, one of them a red to Aparicio. This is when Pacific's form was dipping, and everyone was fuming, and fixture congestion turned out to be a real thing. And we, at the last moment, with Lamoth, via Fernandez's assist, managed to capitalize on it. Open play.
Yeah.
I mean, and this was Pacific struggling, and this was while they were still in the Conca League. And they were in the Conca League. They did better while they were in the Conca League. I think they may have been sacrificing this game for the Conca. Maybe.
Yeah, they definitely, I don't think, again, if memory serves, they may have had their best 11 available, and because they had an early week match against in the CONCACAF League. So,
and I think the squad may have been a bit of tension and discontent in that squad, and that might have been a strike against them right out of the gate. The second road game against Ottawa, that was the weirdest shit I've ever seen. An accidental Olympico, a heavily disputed goal that got ATO the win, a Lamoth off goal that got chalked off, a Lamoth goal that didn't get chalked off and was an absolute thundercock of a strike, and it's basically showed the best and the worst of the Wanderers. And it seemed like we were trying something new, and we just needed to work the mistakes out of it. It showed promise even in defeat, because it seemed like we were trying something different for a change, and it was just so new to us that we had some mistakes to work out of it.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
That was a tough one. But there was still some hope in there. ADO fans would be really happy to have seen Perez come back from injury and come in strong. They rate him highly, and they were happy to see him do well coming just out of injury. Let's see, I think this was one of the first few games AMLO was involved in. He was supposed to be our dollar store DCL. That remains to be seen.
I thought of him as maybe
a target man.
One of the end of season signings we didn't really talk about, and yeah, he did perform well against our U3 squad. He was certainly excellent at PLSQ. He looked a little lost out there once he joined us. I kind of thought of him as sort of an Easton Ongaro type player, a bigger, stronger striker that is pretty quick and good at his feet. We didn't see a lot of that. Part of it, my sense is he just wasn't getting the service that he needed. But part of it too, you've got to get into scoring position. So I'm hopeful we haven't seen the best of him yet, and it was just him adjusting to the professional game. Players that struggle with that initial adjustment, like Malinois, who have eventually come good, right? So right. I'm hopeful that back next year he He's under contract. He's going to have a full training camp, and some professional experience under his belt, and hopefully he fits Geyser's system better than he fit last year. I also don't think the formations we were playing were really conducive to a big number 9, and it looks like Geyser's style is maybe more suited to that. So hopefully we see more out of him going forward.
Hell yeah, I'd love to see that. I would love to see some guys that were relatively quiet but are still in the squad turn up better as a result of Geyser. And I'd love to see what kind of players he brings in as well. Yeah. I'm going to fly through these because we're 55 minutes in, and I'm still talking. And while we put a lot of player stuff and into it, this was still about the season. So Halifax Valor, that was the standard Halifax Wanderers win. York Halifax 2, that was when York showed their quality once again. Wait a minute. That was a draw, and the second York game was a draw, and it was like a shaky draw, but we managed to avoid getting scored on. Keeping in mind that York were missing Darrow at the time. With Darrow, they probably would have knocked 2 past us. And then there were the last 3 games, which were all a wash. The Pacific one at home, literally a wash. You would have to understand that it's been raining. There was one where Salter had a really good, where it scored pretty well in open play, in a complete runaway ball situation, but we were simply outplayed by an Atletico Ottawa that, as we saw, were firing. They've been nothing but solid. And there was the De Rosario Masterclass where we still lost, but he kept it only 1-0 and not another embarrassment.
Yeah.
So overall, the season was shit. There were a few good moments, but the majority of the season was an embarrassment. There were multiple moments of 3 consecutive losses and no consecutive wins. There were really good defensive performances, like the second Cavalry home game and the second York away game, and Campagna showed his quality, as well as Omar, as well as Ruby. Campagna's another one that I'm going to love seeing in the future. But yeah, it was a mess. We couldn't score for Toffee. We couldn't kick into a black hole outside of the spot most of the time. And I think my best player, I'll go to the players right now. My best players were Fernandez, JGL, who I'm gutted to see leave, Polisi, Salter, who set things up a lot. We just couldn't finish, but he set things up a lot. And of course, at the spot he's like Harry Kane. He may as well be Harry Kane. And Rampersad, who's a captain on and off the pitch. Corey Bent is somebody I liked, but who was really quiet at the end of it. He was really...
Corey. I mean, Corey's a great player.
He was like Garcia, really nice initially, really quiet at the end of the season.
When he's healthy, I think he's a phenomenal player. He does seem to struggle with fitness, and so he struggles with going a full 90 on a consistent basis, which in a league where you can only carry 23 players on your primary roster, that's tough. We weren't always in a position to run much as I think he started the season hot with a couple of really great goals, but I think you're right that down the stretch he struggled a little, and I think there was some fitness and injury issues there.
Fitness and injury. After the hit he took in the first home Pacific game, I'm relieved he's still in play. That looked like the kind of thing that would wreck somebody for months.
Yeah.
It might have. Except, well, actually, no, I should hold off on that because it doesn't imply, it implies things I don't intend to imply. Our medical team is better than that. Yeah, I mean, our medical team is much better than that. They wouldn't, if they didn't, they wouldn't clear him unless he was clear. But then again, he was struggling. His body was struggling for much of it, and that's not really his fault. Oh, hi, Prim. What do you think of all that? What do you think of all the soccer ball stuff? Meow. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, then there were a couple. Marshall and Santos, I thought were average. Marshall didn't really do much better than average. He had the occasional game where he looked strong, but he still didn't score, so that doesn't really. He held the ball. There was the occasional game where he held the ball up well, and there were some games where, I mean, I forget what you said about it, but I remember agreeing with it, and I remember it being very harsh.
He had surgery after the Island game. I think he showed flashes in the Island games of what he's capable of, and obviously he came in with a lot of promise. But he had surgery after the Island games, and much like Garcia, I kind of wonder how much of an impact that's had on his play since then. He's never quite seemed to. Again, he's kind of shown flashes here and there of the player I think he is or was capable of being, but has struggled with consistency. Questions about whether we've used him in the right way. Seems like more of a playmaker than a goal scorer, maybe, but nonetheless, Santos, I feel like he was, prior to Campagna, certainly our most consistent center back. And
Santos,
so,
correct. And he was definitely, and Santos is definitely a good guy off the pitch as well. He does get the rest of the squad up for it, and he does get us up for it. There were moments where he was absolutely pissed off about, and you could see it, and it's amazing he didn't get sent off in the Edmonton game, in the last away Edmonton game.
Yeah, I think he spent a lot of time on the left side covering for, he has the left cover for some, and I think that we didn't really have a true starting quality left back this year, and each of them had their own struggles, and I think that he had to spend a lot of time kind of maybe cleaning up some of the mistakes on the left side. So I think he gives us some solidity there, and wouldn't hate to see him back next year.
Yeah, moving up to Campagna, Omar. I don't mean to be harsh on Restrepo or definitely not Santos, Restrepo or Shala, but moving from Restrepo, Santos, Shala to Campagna, Omar, Campagna, Omar, Ruby, and occasionally Santos absolutely galvanized our back line. So did bringing in Basket as our number one. Daniels and Lamoth were kind of crap. They had flashes of brilliance, but they were overall kind of crap, especially later on. Well, okay, Lamoth was doing really well later on, but was crap most of it. Was not doing well. I'm not. Some of that might be the system, to be honest. Lamoth is no longer with us as well. I forget where he went to. He's gone to Pacific, hasn't he? Oh, and he's gone. One moment. You there?
I'm back, I think.
I hear you. I don't see you, but I hear you. Okay.
Yeah, I got.
Well, I'm not going to be able to do it with you, Prim. I don't think I'd get good conversation out of you, Prim. But yeah, so if you're if you're still there, yeah, there you go. So yeah, the Lamoth and Daniels. Lamoth is going to Pacific, so that's him done for us. But Daniels could probably work on under Geyser.
Yeah, again, we'll probably discuss it if we discuss Geyser, but if we get to that, but I could see him fitting into that system. I had a sense, he was very highly touted coming in based on the highlights I'd seen. I was certainly very high on him. He's capable of being, he's technically a very gifted player. It was obvious he was struggling a little bit with his approach. Times when he, lose the ball and kind of give up on the play, and obviously you can't have
That's
that
kind of
happen.
embarrassing. You can't have that.
You have to track back. So, seemed to be struggling a bit with his approach. Geyser plays a very different system that I could see Daniels potentially fitting better into than he fit the system we were playing this year. So, be interested to see if he's back next year, if the new coach sees the same thing.
We've already mentioned Tabby. Oxner and Shala. I highly doubt either of those two are going to be in Geyser's plans. I already told you about Oxner.gif, and I'm not going to go out of my way to slate him. I don't think he's going to be a wanderer though. And Shala, I don't think he's going to be a wanderer either. His contract ended a few days ago. He has the head for it. I don't think he has the legs anymore. He's probably going to end up being in a coaching role for a university team like Garcia. Wouldn't surprise me if he did a Garcia.
For a team like Vancouver as well. I know he's got ties to BC. He plays there sometimes in the off season, so we'll see. I think you're right that maybe I think he's one of those players where he was good for us for the part of the first season that he was there and the shortened second season. I think as the quality of the league has improved, it's maybe exposed his lack of pace a little more, and so I'd be surprised if he's not on, and we'll keep him with.
James Jansen's Shala.gif came from last season.
Yeah, he struggled last year and this year too, and I think he would be a depth center back for us at best this point, and I think that you want those depth spots to go to younger players. To be honest, you want a U21 as your depth CB, preferably for a sports play with.
Santos is still decent, just not on the level of the others. Despite his age, he could probably work as a depth one as well.
Yeah, like I said, I wouldn't hate seeing him back next year.
All right, so Mondway was. I'm still pumped for Mondway, even though he didn't put anything in the back of the net. Most of us didn't put anything in the back of the net.
Yeah, he's a very direct player.
He actually created chances, though. That was a plus, because we didn't do that either for quite some time.
Yeah, he's a very direct player. He's the type of we maybe miss before, and I think others have said, I think once he bangs one in, that's his confidence is going to go through the roof, and he's going to start scoring for us on a more regular basis.
Right. Escobar. I'd love to see Escobar as our primary left back. I really hope he recovers well enough and recovers in a way that he can be our primary left back. If he ends up...
We're maybe starting to get into positional needs for next year. I felt like of our... I didn't see a lot of Escobar, so it's a little hard to judge. He didn't have a lot of time. I don't think any of them were locked in CPL starters, and so I think one of our priorities for next year has to be to get a left back who is a locked in CPL starter, and then who's behind them in terms of depth that can maybe that's got some years ahead of them too. Whether it's Escobar, whether it's Gander, I could take either. And I think Tabby, like I said, maybe needs a bit more seasoning at a semi-pro level.
Yeah. So the guys that we haven't seen much of at all, Gagan, Nuaja, Degelman. Do you think we'll see them under Geyser?
We'll see. I mean, it's hard to predict what a new manager might do or see in particular players. Nuaja certainly came highly touted, and when they first signed him, they sort of said they expected him to compete for first team minutes. And that didn't come to pass, obviously. I have no idea why that is. Certainly signing a few days bumped him down the depth chart a little bit, I'm sure. But, I still have hope for him. Degelman's still an under 18 next year, so from what I understood, the intention was for him to go back to Germany kind of over the winter and spring, and then maybe see him back 18, depending on how the club feels about him. Di Rosario we already talked about, so
Morelli. When Morelli comes back, even Morelli at 60% could work very well under our guy, even if initially just as like a sub.
Yeah, the key to rush him, right? Like,
of course, if we rush him, we ruin him.
And he's not going to be at 100% right away, so don't expect him to come back as the centerpiece of our offense, because it'll take him, it'll take him half the season to get back to where he needs to be. It looks like Geyser likes to play with two midfielders that play as 10s behind a striker, and so, we've got to bring in at least one more anyways.
If we bring in Marky and Wojciechowski, that'd be amazing. I could totally see him bringing in Marky Voy later on. I could totally see that. And that would really help, in my opinion.
Yeah. We're kind of almost getting into positional needs for next year now, but certainly midfields, we've touched on left back. Midfield is going to be one of them as well. We've lost a couple of midfielders, and Geyser plays a very different light on here because I'm a little dark in the room.
Okay. Yeah, so we've actually... Yeah, so we've talked... Yeah, but... So...
I won't rehash it, but Down the Pub podcast did a pretty good job of talking about the tactics that Geyser uses in their episode on the gaffer, and we got a bit of a breakdown as well on the Discord from... I'm trying to remember who gave us a breakdown on Discord. Yeah, we got a bit of a breakdown on the Discord there. It sounds like he kind of played 3-3, but somebody described it more as kind of playing with 5 defensive players and 5 attacking players. So playing with a back 4 and then a defensive midfielder sitting right in front of them. And then on the attack, you've got 2 wingers out wide as striker and two midfielders, but sitting very high up, kind of as 10s behind, very narrow behind the striker. And so it's a very different look to midfield than what we've had before. Being who occupied the next role, because I think Rampy has been there for us for the past couple of years, but he said he prefers to play higher up the pitch. Okay. Omar, I think, has proven himself to be very capable either as the central center back in a back 3, but I think he can also occupy that 6 role. So maybe Maybe we see Omar as a 6 with Rampy further up the pitch. Maybe we see,
Daniels.
Either way, we're going to add some players in the midfield for sure.
Oh yeah. If he ends up bringing in Marky Voy, then I could see him playing Daniels in the time between the decision and the official bringing him in and the signing, just to get them used to that double 10 thing. I mean,
is Marky Voy a U21?
Yeah, he's a U21. If I remember correctly, that's exactly what he is. I think we talked about earlier.
That would be key because all of our U21s are aging out this year. So the 3 this past year were Basket, Mendes, and Pena was added into the season, so we have 4. All 4 of them are not U21s.
Our planned topics are kind of blending together, but that kind of works because there's something of that in the topics we managed to prioritize anyway, right?
Yeah.
So that's not really that much of a problem. That said, what do you think of our supposed head start?
Yeah, that was a bit of something out before the final, congratulating the teams that made the final and saying, the Wanderers were going to have a head start on this season. And the reality is, because they waited until the end of the season for terminating Hart and to start their search for a manager, we really did not have a head start. In fact, we were kind of a little maybe behind where we needed to be. And whether that has affected player departures or what have you, not behind the scenes. But, if you wanted a head start on the season, the reality is they needed to get rid of Hart before the season was over and start that manager search before the season was over. So we've already seen roster moves from other clubs, and maybe the Wanderers are making roster moves behind the scenes, but at this moment, it very much does not look like we had a head start on preparing for next year. Which leads us into, I think, the player departures discussion. We already touched a little bit on Lamoth, and a squad player, maybe he finds more consistency under a new manager, and if he does, I certainly think he's shown flashes of being able to be a DPL starter. But JGL is obviously the bigger.
JGL is a big blow, and we need to replace JGL. We need that absolute base of the midfield, number here, there, everywhere, number 8 kind of guy that will be able to do a job anywhere on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, him and Rampy really kind of set the tone for the whole team, and I think we'll probably miss maybe even more than his presence on the field, but he was obviously a leader within that team, and we don't have a lot of veteran players. It's a very young team, and part of that's a function of being a development league, but part of that is a conscious choice that's been made by the team to target younger players, which is fine. But Rampy and him were kind of, I think,
they were like this.
I think down the publication, you refer to them as mom and dad, but they were definitely the leaders on that team. And so whether we bring in another veteran to kind of fill that leadership gap, or whether somebody else steps up to fill that gap, Epi did put out on that live episode of Down the Pub to Mo Omar's leadership qualities. So maybe he's the one we see step up to fill that leadership void in the room. He captained his Notre Dame team to a Final Four, and so he may be part of what fills that leadership void.
Yeah, I mean, Rampersad, even though Rampersad is clearly one of Hart's players, he came from TNT. He came, I believe he came with Hart from TNT. But he's very much somebody who I could see adapting well to Geyser's system.
Yeah.
Ramps, yeah. Does
that lead us into talking new gaffer?
Yeah, the new gaffer, yeah. So what about the Geyser era? I saw one of the interviews. That's where I learned how to properly pronounce Geyser, and it's also where I saw that he is a charismatic guy, much like Hart, but he's also somebody who knows how to who knows how to talk to his players at length, who knows how to talk to the crowd, who interviews well. I still don't know how well he handles a loss, but he doesn't seem to handle them poorly. It's not like he's never lost. That nobody. I don't think that's true of anybody. Who, unless they
had to handle too many. He hasn't had to handle too many of them, but we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, probably. We're going to lose games. We're going to have games where we look at and we think, oh, we played kind of crap there. But I think we could at least minimize, we'll at least be able to minimize the Forge at home kind of embarrassments.
Yeah, I mean, I think Down the Pub said, the way he plays, it's possible we'll have a couple of blowouts here, just because it's a very attacking system, but one that maybe leaves you vulnerable at the back a little bit. But I think we are going to see more goals scored this year. I'll admit, I was skeptical at first about the hire when it was kind of first leaked. I've been hoping for pro. The management team we've got in place right now pretty much do not have pro management experience outside of the Halifax Wanderers, and so I was maybe looking for somebody that was going to come from another pro club and have experience in that environment and maybe bring some new thoughts and ideas and ways of doing things. Nonetheless, I've been very impressed so far. I mean, he's a guy who's coached something like 5 current national team players and helped develop at least 3 of them in a very significant way. He's got a real winning track record with Vaughan, who are they're a semi-pro club, but they've been a juggernaut.
Yes, they have.
In League One, and they're very sophisticated set up for a semi-pro club. So, I take some part from that, and just the way he communicates you watching and for the team going forward. Like, if he can communicate that effectively in interviews, I'm pretty sure, and sell the supporters on it, I'm pretty sure he can sell the players on an approach too. So he obviously very much likes attacking football on the front foot, and made that clear in his interviews, and has a clear idea around the identity of the team he wants. And now it's really up to it falls to the club to see if they can get him the players he needs to play that way. Can they find the goal scorers? Whether it's in League One or from overseas or elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as we can find them. And may Duncan Ferguson forgive me. As long as he's the kind of attacking coach that's more like Jurgen Klopp and not, say, Roberto Martinez, where he ends up leaving a super wide open where even amazing defenders couldn't be properly handled.
It's definitely going to require some players in midfield that can move, because, like I said, you've got kind of that 6 defensive midfielder sitting right in front of 2 center backs, and then a couple of attacking midfielders 10 further up the pitch. It's going to do it, but if you can find some midfielders that are up to the task, that'll be a key part. I think I mentioned, left back is going to be the way he uses his backs is quite interesting too. Like, the left back kind of tucks in sometimes and supports the defensive midfielder as kind of a double pivot, and so you've got to have a left back that's comfortable playing that way, which maybe our existing ones aren't. And then we touched on a little as maybe an international striker who's got some pro experience. I think, like I said, we all hope that Ludwig Amla develops into the player we think he's capable of being, but I don't think we can bet our season on it. And so, having an experienced striker who can hopefully help bring Amla along as well, I think will be critical. And you touched a little bit on goalkeeping. And you'd be surprised to see Oxner back. I think some people are thinking maybe we may not see either of our keepers. But I certainly think neither of them are quite starting quality, and so we do need a starting quality keeper. If Basket were to come back as the backup, I wouldn't be upset about that. If Di Rosario came to us on a loan as the backup, I wouldn't be upset about that.
I'd be very okay with Basket. Well, Basket Darrow would be a start. But I think that's one of the players that Geyser might need to bring in.
I think you need an experienced keeper to bring the young guys along. I think that's part of what's been missed. So.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about positional needs already. So
Yeah.
left back, yes. Goalkeeper, yes. At another 10, yes. An 8, yes. If we don't replace JGL,
really play with traditional
it's not good
eights
enough.
is the interesting thing. So I kind of wonder if it's kind of like 2 10s and a 6.
As long as he's not dogmatic about that.
No, this is assuming that he plays the same tactics with the Wanderers that he played with Vaughan, and he may adopt a different tactical approach. He may decide something else is going to work at this level. So we'll see. But I think others have pointed out that's his approach is kind of more consistent with the way tactics seem to be going, which is formations are a lot more fluid these days, and I'm glad to see a coach that kind of embraces that fluidity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I lose that?
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. You need to be fluid because not everything's going to work. And the thing is, the fewer approaches you have at your disposal, the easier to predict each one becomes.
Yeah.
We found that we have a whole season worth of visual aids about that. In fact.
Yeah. And I mean the League One season is much shorter than the CPL season, so I mean obviously he's going to need more tactics, a little more tactical flexibility in the CPL than he did in League One.
More games, fewer teams.
It's one thing to play the same formation over 14 games or whatever. It's quite another to play it over 28, right? So,
correct. In an 8-team league.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But bottom line, I went from being a bit skeptical to being cautiously optimistic about the Fire, and looking forward to bring next. If he's able to get the Wanderers playing anything like he was able to get Vaughan playing, I think it's going to be much more fun to watch next year.
All right. Sound. Okay. Yeah, that really works. We'll see what comes of it. I mean, we're treading brave new ground here, and get me to April. I mean, I was originally going to be all bothered. I even had a couple of ranty little things I wrote down specifically to use in this, but pertaining to the supposed head start, the non-head start. But the news about Geyser and what he does really put that away.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful again, if cautiously.
If anything, I wish we'd gotten him sooner, but
right you are.
It's going to be exciting over the next weeks and months to see. Will be that will be some updates on Owen roster in the coming weeks. It sounds like maybe by bits and pieces, and probably have a clearer idea by January of who all is back, and then hopefully see some new signings after that.
Yeah, the thing of it is that we'll have to take each game as it comes. They have to believe that the players and the manager have to believe that what they can do. Even if we don't, they have to believe that they can win. They have to believe that they can take the game to Forge and win that, even unless it's proven otherwise. I think he can instill that. I mean, we'll see. Holy shit!
Yeah, but I think Hope Hopeville once again. So
Right, you are. So there. So we have. So we've. I think we've knocked all of these topics off the list. This talking about the season seemed to be most of it, but it was for a good reason. There was a lot to say about the season. Anyhow, we're into extra time. Is there anything else you want to add that may or may not be on topic, but still kind of apt?
No, it's like I said. I mean, I think there's lessons to be learned from last season. But I think the most important thing is that things look more hopeful going forward, and looking forward. As you said, April can't come soon enough. I'm looking forward to getting back to the grounds and seeing some familiar faces, because
I hope
it's not just about the club, it's about the community.
You might even, who knows, you might even see me there. If
there we go.
If I look at it and I'm comfortable going there.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
You've had very good health reasons for staying away, but this club there's a great community that surrounds it. We've all met some wonderful people.
It's up. I'm not sure. I'll decide that on the month of.
Well, I do hope to see you out. If not, we'll schedule another kick around sometime this week.
Yeah, sure. I like those two little kicks around. Yeah, I mean, I guess ain't talking anymore about whether or not I'll be able to go to the grounds would fall way beyond the scope of this channel. So that's why I'm gonna leave it at. Anywho, we're gonna.
Good talking to you, Jordan.
It's been good talking to you. Up those wonderful Blues. Let's win the lot. We're winning the lot. We're winning the lot. We're making a cup run. We're gonna get the double. We're gonna get into Conca champs, and we're gonna friggin' nail that. And we're all Wanderers, aren't we?
I'd love to see some of those CONCACAF teams at the grounds.
You know it. Anyhow, I guess that's that. See you.
All right. Thanks, Jordan. Take care.
You too. Bye.